Warframe has a lot of content, including, but not limited to, a full roguelike Souls-like game with its own story, flying space missions, multiple open-world zones, each complete with their own rep and items to farm, PvP, spaceship combat, endless round-based farming, fishing, harder endless round-based farming, dog, endless round-based farming, with roguelike features. So I'm an unemployed college graduate, and I've spent the past 9 days putting around 80 hours into Warframe instead of looking for a job. And for about 78 of these hours, I've been completely lost and confused. And instead of the game clearing up this confusion for me, I had to join a clan with a bunch of experienced players. And as soon as I did, they sniffed me out as the tight little Warframe virgin that I am, showering me in Indo, credits, and mods. But in the dark times before I was a petite little sugar baby, I was confused, wiggling down the star chart aimlessly. Oh, what's the star chart, you might ask? Well, it's around 263 connected missions that the bottom-feeding troglodytes might assume is the main game. However, us experienced veteran Warframe players know that when you beat the star chart and unlock the steel path, you are in mid-game. Which takes about 100 hours, by the way. Which is weird, because for most MMOs, when you put about 100 hours into it, you're already in or approaching endgame. But in Warframe, you have about 1,000 hours after this to go, buddy. But even with the game not showing new players what to do that well, this is still some of the most fun I've ever had in a live service game. With saying that, I do have some criticisms. But before I get burnt at the stake by a bunch of Warframe veterans, I'm gonna go over the good stuff first. The first thing I want to touch on is the movement. Oh my god, nothing feels better than just zooming through the levels, just jumping, just gliding, whatever. They really decided to go with the most ridiculous fast-paced movement ever, and it's just so good. You can just tell they spent a lot of time refining this system and making sure that it felt smooth. And on top of that, I just figured out that you could aim next to a wall while in midair, and it makes you stick to the wall and you can just aim. Yeah, the movement gets a big smiley face from me. And the next thing I'd like to touch on is the grind. A lot of times when playing an MMO, people will treat themselves like corporate dogs for the company that made the game, logging in every day to do their dailies or weeklies on like 7 different characters, and they don't even like enjoy doing that, but yet they do it anyway because they have so much time invested in the game that they feel like they can't quit. But what I've noticed about Warframe is the only 2 mandatory grinds are the quests and the star chart, which is the equivalent of leveling a character in another MMO. But beyond this, a lot of systems in Warframe are just different ways to achieve the same goal, so you can just do whatever's fun to you. Like, for example, there's this thing called the circuit, where every single week you can unlock every part that you need to unlock a Warframe. But if you hate the circuit, you can alternatively just farm whatever boss drops those same parts. And like I said, I feel like most systems in Warframe are like this. So this eliminates the tedious grind of logging in every single week to do things you don't want to do on 7 different characters. But I could go on and on about this, so I'm just gonna move on to the music, because damn, the music is good. Well, kinda, because like a lot of games like World of Warcraft or Minecraft or Terraria, they have perfect ambient background music, but Warframe doesn't have this. A lot of the background music in Warframe is just kind of forgettable, and you'll find yourself just not paying attention to it half the time. But what they do have are these individual songs that they made for the game that are really good. And there's not much more to say about this. Just go listen to We All Live Together and Sleeping in the Cold Below, and you'll know exactly what I mean. Hey! Did you know that I'm live on Twitch right now? And for every viewer that I have when I'm a small streamer, I will be buying them a Lamborghini when I'm big. So come watch twitch.tv/Magalon. I'm live every single day between 3 and 7 p.m. EST. And another thing I think Warframe does amazing is the combat. I'm a pretty big fan of ARPGs, and this game feels very similar to that. And what I mean by that is in games like Diablo or Last Epoch or Path of Exile, the more you're able to just go through the game and one-shot all the enemies, the better the game feels. And you can get certain frames or weapons that are so powerful that the game just kind of plays itself, which is really good for me specifically because I like playing Necromancer in Diablo. And the ability to get really powerful along with just flying around the map killing everything, it feels so good. But beyond that, there are so many different weapons and so many ways to mod these different weapons. It truly feels like there's just an infinite amount of ways to theorycraft weapons in this game. For example, when you go to mod a gun, you can put multiple different types of elemental mods on it, and depending on how they're positioned on the gun, it gives you different effects. And beyond guns, you can mod almost everything in the game. So there's just an unlimited amount of ways you can theorycraft and enjoy combat in the game. But the next thing I want to talk about is the market, because the market in Warframe is like nothing else I've ever seen. There's a symbiotic relationship between the actual players and the whales of this game, because instead of actually grinding for the hard items in this game, the whales will just pay for the in-game currency and then trade it with other players to get the items. And so every single player that I've ran into at this point has never spent money on the game. They just earn the premium currency through trading with other players, a lot of the time times those players they're trading with have also never spent money on the game. And this creates another really interesting way of grinding for items, because if there's an item that you want but you don't like grinding for, you can just farm a completely different item and then use that item to trade for platinum, and then use that platinum to trade for the item that you want. Or you can use the platinum that you earn to buy store items. So what I'm saying is, even though Warframe is a free-to-play game with microtransactions, almost no one ends up spending money on the game. There's just a relatively small part of the player base that spends a lot of money. While this is cool, and I don't think the monetization of Warframe is predatory at a fundamental level, it actually brings me to my first big issue with the game. And that is, when you log in as a new player, you have no idea about these systems. And the game doesn't really tell you at all. You just go to your arsenal and see if you can unlock any new Warframes, and you see that each Warframe is about $20, and there's hundreds of Warframes in the game. And you can get a lot of these Warframes from just farming a boss for like 20 minutes. But again, the game doesn't really tell you this. And it's like this for almost every single item in the game. So what a lot of new Warframe players assume is that the only way you can obtain items is through microtransactions, which couldn't be further from the truth, but you can't blame them because Warframe doesn't tell them at all. And if that wasn't bad enough, starting this game felt a lot like starting League of Legends. Now, I've been playing League for about 11 years, so I know how everything works in the game now, but when you first start, it throws so many things at you and it only tells you how to move your character, which is very similar to the way Warframe starts. Which means, exactly like League, the best way to learn the game is to just get someone who already has 1,000 hours in the game to teach you. And while you can do this, you shouldn't have to. And I love both League and Warframe, but the reason these games can't get new players is this exact problem. A game should never assume that you have a friend that has 1,000 hours in the game that can teach you, or be willing to dedicate hundreds of hours in the game before you actually know what's going on. This is simply just bad game design. And I know a lot of Warframe players try to defend this point, but they shouldn't. The game should just do better. And this really is my biggest issue with the game, along with the issue I think they need to prioritize fixing the most. And I have one more complaint about the game that's not as serious to me, but is to a lot of players. When playing an MMO, if the combat and the gameplay loop is good enough, I don't care about the story. With that being said, I think the gameplay of Warframe makes up for the story. But having a good, interesting story, it just makes the game feel so much better. And man, I gotta say, the story of Warframe is just a whole lot of nothing so far. The story and almost every single quest before the new dream could just be removed. And even when I got to the new dream, like, there was a cool twist, but it's still like whatever. And I just completed the War Within, and that was a really good, interesting quest, and I hope the game keeps going in that direction. But that doesn't change the fact that the first 80 hours worth of quests are just a bunch of nothing burgers. Each quest before the two I mentioned just feels like a 5-minute episode of The Twilight Zone with no plot, meaning they connect in no meaningful way and they have no impact at all. Most quests are just like, this new bad guy popped up, go take him out. Or, whoa, I just got this new signal that's like mysterious and random, but it never like materializes into anything, because when you get there, it's just a new bad guy that pops up. But those are really my only complaints with the game. I think overall Warframe is a fucking amazing game, but I'm not gonna sit here and act like every single aspect of the game is perfect. But I think if you're looking for a new game to grind that has a really good community, along with a shitload of content that you can spend thousands of hours in, I would highly recommend this game over something like Destiny 2, which is a whole nother bag of worms. And since you never have to spend money on the game, there's no reason for you to not give it a shot. And if the game's not for you, that's fine. But if it is for you, you have the next 1,000 hours of gaming figured out for yourself. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitch. See ya.